Hi guys, welcome back again. We are at the Grizzly Jig Show 2019 here in Crowsville, Missouri. We got the Crappie Connection here in the back. Justin Berry here. We got my friend
Brad Chappell,
brother from another mother, and we got Kris Mann and Jeff Smith from the Crappie Magnet stuff. Guys, welcome.
Hey, glad to be with you guys.
Good to be here.
Seeing your show, it's awesome.
Appreciate it. So let's just dive right in. Let's look at some, see a bunch of products laid out here. Or first, tell us about your company and what you got going on in just a full 9 yards.
Well, the company started back in the 90s as a trout company. We started with the Trout Magnet, if you're familiar with it or not. It was really a popular bait and grew and went all over the country, but people were using it for crappie. And it's a 1/64 of an ounce jig that most people will say is the only jig in the market without a special knot. They'll fall completely horizontal, doesn't fall head weight. And so that's how it all started, and people started saying, you need to make this bigger for crappie. And so I made a little bit bigger one, and it sucked. I mean, it was horrible. It was the worst thing ever.
You made it at least.
Oh, it was bad. In fact, Walmart took it. And we put it in the stores, and oh my goodness, it was an embarrassment. It really was. And it was one of those deals where when you look back, you get ahead of yourself sometimes. You try to do something. The Trout Magnet was so successful that this just made sense. But there was one person I didn't ask, and that was the crappie. And I fished small ponds with this thing, and it worked well, but I didn't fish lakes. I didn't fish places that really would have told me what they thought of. Yeah. And so it was really rough. So we started. At that point, the good Lord opened up a door to a guy in Nashville, Tennessee named Dude Maddox. And if you ever can have him on something like this, I promise your eyes will be open and your mouth will be like, what just happened to me? Yeah. The most knowledgeable crappie guy I've ever met in my life.
What's his name again?
Dude Maddox.
Dude Maddox.
Yeah, he's won several tournaments. I mean, he doesn't even fish them, really. He came in second or third at the Classic. He's just really good single pole jig fisherman. But anyways, he called me one day and said, hey, I've taken your bait and I got it where it works better than anything I got. I said, you got my attention. So I went to visit with him and completely changed our bait. And that's when I found out real quick, if you want to make baits that work, first you got to ask the crappie, but number two, there's usually somebody out there that knows how to do it.
Right.
And so we just started partnering with people, all throughout the industry that knew how to fish. Like I wish I'd have known Brad at the time. I needed a long lining king. I didn't have one.
You're sitting right
I
across
didn't
from one.
have it. And so, when we started making baits, after that, that's what I do now. Right now we've got a lot of stuff for power trolling. Well, man, I know about as much as power trolling as I do how to get to the moon, right? So we went and spent some time with some guys in Mississippi, Les Smith and Driscoll and all those guys that are down there, and we started making the fin spin, which is a shad dart head, which is what we're known for. Is the Trout Magnet is a shad dart, right? So the way it falls in the water, it's got a little bit of a dart action. We started making the that fin spin, which has got a cup on it. See that cup? As it comes through the water, it pushes the water down to here, which makes the blade turn at slower speeds.
Right.
This will actually turn to 0.3.
Helps the current turn the blade.
It just pushes it right to it. So we started going with them and honing in on what worked and how to fish for them. And then we made a big curly tail for that style of fishing. And so the curly tail is just a giant curly tail with a hinge in it, right? But again, I wanted to make it to be something that we could troll really slow. So it's got a hinge in the middle and real light tail. So again, that all came from other people, really. And so I just started partnering with the right people. Dude was a big part of the tail on how to make a tail turn a lot faster at slower speeds.
Yeah.
And you think there's several things that go through your mind. How do you make a bait that makes the tail go faster? Well, the first thing I thought, make the tail thinner, right?
Right.
That did not work. That was the worst idea, because one, it rips, and two, it just doesn't make it turn any faster. So then I tried making it longer. That didn't work either. Well, Dude Maddox took a knife and cut mine and said, here you go, and handed it back to me. I'm like, that ain't gonna work. And it, sure enough, daggone it, that thing just turned as slow as you want to pull it.
Just cut it.
Well, he cut it like, it's hard to explain. But if you look at most curly tails at the end, it'll be thicker from top to bottom right through there. And all he did is cut it right through here with it looks like a sickle almost. And when you cut that sickle shape out, it just right through the water. So it just so easy too, yeah. And so you're talking about how the crappie magnet happened. It was a birth out of making trout lures and then finding the best crappie fishermen in the world. And now we have what Kris uses is the original crappie magnet that Dude helped me design. And Dude actually probably helped you get into this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He was a great mentor to us. A couple of guys at tournament fish. I fished with my dad, Terry, and we got started and went down and fished a little bit with Dude. And he loves to fish Percy Priest and around Nashville. They fish not only Percy Priest, but fish Old Hickory there. And those guys are the best. They are premier single pole jig fishermen. That's what Dad and I like to do. So we got down there. taught us a few things, tricks of the trade, and then we've been able to expand upon that. So
Okay, what's some of that tricks of the trade? We're just
Yeah.
give us something up.
Spill the beans, man.
spill the beans.
So let me tell you what's really weird about Kris and his dad is you got to realize they're fishing the Crappie USA tournament trail against spider riggers,
Right.
and they use one pole, and 2 years straight they won the points division. 2 years
Really?
straight. So this is not just two average Joe Schmo single pole jig fishermen. These guys
Yeah.
can target big fish because you think about what you're doing in a tournament.
You want 7 big fish.
You want 7 big fish, so you target those big fish where they live. And sometimes it's actually harder with all the 7 poles to get in where that guy lives, or a stump where he lives. That single pole can actually be pretty beneficial to use and catch those big fish.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Let me see here. Is there? What else did you have out there? Did you have something
Well,
else?
that's the Crappie Magnet right there.
Okay.
And the Crappie Magnet is just basically a split tail grub, the ugliest lure we make.
Right.
And that's what dude was telling about. But here's the key to it. It's got a split tail, if you see it. But it's not a tentacle tail like a tube jig, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't move. But it stays open, and staying open is what kills them. If that thing looks like that when they look up on it, that's what they like.
Yeah.
And so what dude did is he made it to where it would stay open a little bit, and our mold is made a little bit different. And it's really weird. Crappie, they've got an opinion about things. And so you just have to tell from them what they like. And for some reason, when we opened that tail up like that, and you fish it. Now, if you look, you have one of those double cross jigs. Open one of those up right there. The key to the whole thing was...
too.
The key to that whole thing was getting it to look like that, right? Because if it stays together, they don't like it as much. So basically what you want is you either want a nibble or
I wonder
something
why
like
that would be, though. I mean, I've
that
got my own
crazy?
theory on this one.
You tell me. Tell me what your theory is, 'cause I'm curious.
I would think it would be a crawfish
Interesting. Yeah, the gap maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something about
or
when
a
it looks-
bug. I mean,
Bug.
And we make a bait that's got a straight tail, a real giant, and it works good for big fish. But number-wise, this is what you want. But the double cross jig was a Dude Maddox invention as well. It's got barbs on the side instead of up and down.
Right.
And basically, when you put it on the body, it opens that tail up. It torques it a little bit, if that makes sense. So then the tail always stays open, right? So that's what he showed us, was how to fish that tail to stay open like that in the water. And when it stays open, it'll outfish that straight tail almost every day of the week.
Really?
Now, when you're fishing this over other stuff, I can't explain it, but when you've got a single pole in brush with this bait,
Deadly.
it's bad deadly. And the good thing about it is it's solid core in the center right here. We use a pretty hard plastic. And so it doesn't tear. I'll catch 20 or 30 fish on that one bait.
On
and
that
I'm
one bait
never
right there,
pulling
you'll
up.
catch 20 fish.
Oh,
I guarantee it.
easily.
And
easily.
the double barbs on the side are
Yeah,
a big
show us
part
that
of
real quick.
Yeah, the double cross, it basically it has barbs on the sides instead of up and down. Dude Maddox came to me and he was gluing my heads on to make that tail do that for a time, and then he wouldn't have to push his body back up on. I went fishing one day and he goes, "Hey, I got this thing figured out. I took a Dremel and I cut this and I cut that." I'm like, "Okay, dude, let me see it." I looked at it, I'm like, "It's a double barb jig. Everybody makes that, right?" He goes, "No, this is on the side." He said, "One, it opened your tail up, and two, I never have to push my jig body back up." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So I fished it. Sure enough, I'm like, this is weird. And if you fish that jig, at first you'll go, "Oh, it's just a round jig head." Then you go, "I just caught 20 fish and never pushed my body back up on there." Well, it took me forever to make them. That's why nobody in the industry made them at first. Companies just copied us recently, but no one made them at first because they're really hard to pour. Because centrifugal force pours them in a circle like this, and it doesn't go up and down. So anyways,
these are hard to pour.
very tricky to pour. That's right.
Oh,
'cause
it's staggered.
it's
There you go.
staggered, and that's what pulls. It's a torque on it that makes the. And our spinners have that same system on it too. You can see on them pretty well. You can see that that's points on the sides.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I started making them, and I still didn't get it. Till one day I was spider rigging, I looked over, and the guy was taking the fish off, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" I finally figured out why it worked better. It's not from when the fish bites it. A fish doesn't bite it right there, right? It's when you're taking the fish off that your plastic would hit the fish on where the barbs are made of
mouth.
everybody else, right? So that's why barbs rip plastic. This one just doesn't rip the plastic. It's really weird because you never touch the jig on the side. You're always grabbing it like this or, pushing it back in. But anyways, it's just a different style of jig made specifically for us. Because when you look at that jig, it's a small little hook, right? It's made to single pole fish.
Yep.
You don't, not a whole lot of room for a minnow and that kind of stuff. But
I can see even putting in a minnow between that so it can kind of
No
ride better,
question.
maybe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think that's an underrated application for that particular jig is, a lot of folks you can actually thread that up on a shank hook without a lead head jig on it, and it stays on well because it's solid body.
Yeah.
Like you said, a little smaller profile, a little shorter bait that you can tip with a minnow. We rarely ever are you going to see us with minnows in the boat. But when we do,
You saying minnow lives matter?
they do matter.
Minnow
They do
lives
matter.
matter. I remember
Absolutely.
Brad first told me that, and I was like, man, that is awesome.
That's
trademark.
Gotta
Yeah.
use
Yes,
that, yeah.
I could sell that. Yeah.
They do matter. So,
is
and
awesome.
we do our part to make sure they all stay alive. That's
Right.
that's our point. Exclusively back to Brad's point earlier when he asked about, what are some of those tips? What are some of those secrets that we've used? We've fished pretty much all over the country. We don't fish a lot in the deep south, but I'm going to say we fish from, down in Alabama, northern Alabama, all the way up into Illinois. This tactic that we've used, single pole jigging and brush piles, fishing structure with it, works all over the country. We have been successful with that. We've been blessed to be successful with that, with a good bait, a lot of hard work. But this bait works all over the country, and I tell folks that because, oftentimes they think, well, whatever the hometown hero bait is, they want that in their hand in their boat. And I'm saying, just give this a shot. Let it, try to let it work for you wherever you go on your lake. One of the keys that we have learned to that, and you guys probably have as well, even long lining, color matters. So much color matters. It is so underrated in this game because, people, they get in their mind, they're like, oh, Jeff's just trying to sell bait, so he's going to put 100 colors out there so
My
he
wife
can.
likes shoes. I got to sell lots of colors.
Yeah. And, they think that that's just, a way to push and, market and sell baits. And
Right. But it's not.
No, it's not. Reality is those fish are finicky some days. You all have probably noticed not only is a certain color work on a certain day at a certain lake, you may have to change colors 10 times throughout the day.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's got everything to do with light penetration, everything to do with how much sun we're getting, how much cloud cover you're getting, how stained the water is, what the depth of the water is. It's all dependent on how well fish can see that bait. And, I'm a firm believer that crappie are biting somewhere on that lake at any given time throughout the day.
Yeah. If you hear a bad tournament or a bad day and nobody's doing good, I always tell myself, somebody's finding them.
Yep.
Somebody's going to get them.
Right.
And
Somebody's going to get them.
That's never a good feeling if you're fishing the tournament. You're not the one catching them.
Yeah.
You're like, man, I know somebody's getting them, but it ain't me.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing that you'll notice about these guys and Dude is how they fish the crappie magnet that's really unique in the fact that most people move the bait way too much.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
And our tails don't move, right? So if you're moving it, you're making it hop, which looks like nothing in our water column, right?
Yeah.
That the crappie are feeding on. So if you see them, they fit that thing, and it's either sitting there or it's coming straight up as slow as it can come.
Yeah.
And that's a huge deal because you don't miss fish. Most people are going, pump, 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 pump. You probably missed 3 fish right there. You didn't feel it.
Yeah.
Their poles are just like that. And I fish with them, and I got to slow down, Smith. Got to slow down because I'm moving it, trying to get to where the fish are instead of just letting it sit right there in the structure where the fish are.
Yeah.
And that's also knowing your equipment as well because they're watching that equipment. And Brian and Dude, I fished with them last February. I'll never forget it. Fishing 50 feet of water with that crappie magnet and watching the bait and watching the fish at 50 foot, knowing he never even looked at his pole. Boom, and brought him up, eyes popping out of their head at 50 feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so knowing that equipment, but he was holding it dead still. It's February, but still, no matter what time of the year it is, it's just holding that thing still. And our baits should sit like this, which is natural.
With
right?
that split tail right there. What's that
That
called
split tail
again?
right there. It's
Yeah.
called a crappie magnet.
How many
you tell
colors
them-
you got?
What's that?
How many colors?
Oh, about 50.
About
There's a
50.
bunch.
You got
Yeah.
50 colors?
Yeah. There's a bunch of colors of this.
Does any of them glow?
Oh, we have a lot of glow.
How many glows you got, you think?
Ooh, probably 15, I'd say.
15 glows.
Yeah.
Are they any of them scented?
No scented, no. And in the slab magnet, we got a lot of them glow. This is actually called Elsie's glow. An old lady used to watch me, had blue hair, and look at that blue. Doesn't it look like a blue lady's hair? So that glows too.
see that?
Yeah, sure can. That's called Elsie's glow. But see, that's the same concept as the crappie magnet. Dead still, no tail movement. But even without the tail movement, look at that thing
Look
right
at
there.
that.
See? It just has the littlest motion right there.
You're trying not to
But
make it
he's
move, and
nervous.
you can't quit.
He's nervous.
Chris and I were talking about this earlier.
Starstruck.
Can't look
Godwin
away.
was just here.
That's it.
Yeah.
Chris and I were just talking. There's a lot of baits out there, and there's a lot of great baits out there, but they're all different and have a different use.
Yeah,
A lot of people
different
go,
purpose.
This looks like a baby shad. Well, this is 3 times the size of a baby shad if you sit it beside it.
Yeah, it sure is.
And so there's different uses. Sometimes that baby shad is the right size, right?
Right.
This was made only to fish tournaments. But I see people a lot because it catches bigger fish. You don't catch as many as you do with that bait right there. This is a numbers game. This is our size game. So each bait has its own use, and like I said, a lot of the baits out there are fantastic baits. Knowing what to use that bait for in that particular water that day, is the biggest part of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people take, Bobby Garland or Crappie Magnet, and they'll say, I caught him on this lake on that. Well, that's a different type of water and different depth, and you're long lining this one and you're single pole on this one or pushing that one. There's so many different ways to fish. You got to find out, what was that bait made for? Was that because we made it for one particular thing? We made that to single pole, and I made that to long line and push. Right? When you get that figured out, you start, using everybody's baits the way they're supposed to be used, and you catch a lot more fish.
I agree.
Man, I'm just soaking it all in right now.
Yeah,
Because I haven't really paid attention to the other products out there, and it's awesome. How many jig sizes you come in at?
This has a 32nd all the way down to a quarter. We
So
have
4 sizes.
Have 4 sizes. That's right. In the fin spin and the double cross has that many sizes. This has a 32nd as well, which people are using for long lining because it's so light they can long line it, with small baits and that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Kris, I want to get to a little bit know about you. So how many tournaments you fish a year?
We'll fish anywhere usually from 10 to 15, 20 tournaments a year.
That's a lot.
Yeah, we normally fish 6, 8 tournaments regular season during Crappie USA.
Yeah.
We've been blessed several years to qualify for the Classic that we fished. We also fish some local tournament trails and just pick up a few tournaments to stay tuned up throughout the year is kind of what we say. So we absolutely just love it. We started, I think, in 2007. Dad and I fishing with Crappie USA and started that tournament trail. The last 3 years, the good Lord has just blessed us. We have had 3 outstanding years. We fished on the amateur division that first year that really took off, and I think we ended up with about 4 first place tournament wins that year. We moved to the professional division the next year, won a couple more tournaments, and this past year we won a couple of first place tournaments. And I think the last 2 years we've had top 5 finishes. Every one of our points that have gone, they take your top 5 finishes throughout, and every one of those I think we've had 194 points plus, so that means we've probably finished 6th place or better in those tournaments. So it's just been a couple years kind of hitting on all cylinders, just blessed. Things have been going well. Like I said, we've literally, and people think I'm joking, they think, oh, there's somewhere along the line you all have used minnows or somewhere that you've done something pushing baits or you've done something different, and no, we haven't.
So
we've
all these tournaments you never used no minnows?
single pole jig. I told them last year, this past year we caught 0 fish on a minnow for the tournament. The year before we had 2 weigh-in fish all year long that came off minnows. Every other fish we caught was off these products.
Where'd you use them 2 minnows at?
Lake Cumberland. We came across 2 good fish at Lake Cumberland on a 2-day super event. We'd fished an area and just absolutely worn it out with these. And I told Dad, I said, let's set up the spider rig real quick and run through there and see if we can pick up another fish or 2 with a minnow. And we sure enough did. We picked up 2 decent fish that were weigh-in fish. Beyond that, everything we've caught in the last 2 years has come off these baits.
So you're pretty comfortable with fishing tournaments without minnows, no matter where you're at.
You won't find them in the boat. 9 times out of 10, you won't find a minnow in our boat.
That's yeah. I don't want to fish against you.
No. And, yeah.
We're gonna put minnows in your boat.
Yeah.
Just
That's right,
your
you throw them
boat.
off.
And there's a reason for that. Is number one, these products work. We don't have to have a minnow. But number 2, so much time I feel like is wasted throughout a tournament day when you're trying to keep minnows alive. Especially in the summer. Things are getting hot. It's hard to keep them alive. You either got to have oxygen, you got to have ice. You're all day long. You're full of those, and it's really taking time away from your fishing. And the style that we've developed over time is the more brush, the more spots we can hit throughout a day, the better off we are. So we see it as an efficiency game. You go onto a body of water and you run around and you're running your graphs and you're marking brush. you're trying to fine tune the depth, the area of the lake. And then once you do, man, you can really hone in. If you can single pole jig and run into a spot on a waypoint on your graph, maybe dropping a buoy, maybe not, you're pulling up to that place, and two of us shoulder to shoulder in the front of the boat are just absolutely wearing that spot out, man. We're down in it. We're working it. And if there's no fish there, we're on.
What about single jig, double jigs? What's your setup?
What's your setup?
Single jigs. We use normally 1/8 ounce. Rarely do we ever get anything beside 8. We are actually experimenting right now with a 3/16 ounce jig, which we like. It gets down there a little bit quicker. As Jeff said, there's not a lot of movement on our bait, so we're not so much worried about that super light bait where they're hitting it on the fall. We're trying to get it down there, get it in the fish's face. Either do that dead stick approach where you're letting it there. Another technique that a lot of people don't use, we just use a steady, slow reel sometimes.
Really?
So I'm dropping to the bottom, bringing it up.
Dropping the bottom and reeling up just a little bit.
Yeah, and a lot of folks never use that technique. They never would think that. And that's one, I'll credit that to Brian, Oldham, Dude Maddox. Those guys love that technique of just slow reeling through the water column. Once you kind of fine tune the depth of where those fish is at, you can kind of drop down there, and then I'm giving it 3 or 4 cranks, and if I don't catch it, I'm up and dropping again. So real efficient.
That's good stuff. I just can't keep in the back of my mind that all the tournaments you fish is no minnows. I mean, Kris Mann, ladies and gentlemen, don't fish fishes no minnows in all tournaments.
Yep.
So what kind of electronics you run up front?
We run a Humminbird. I've got a Helix 7 up front. I run an 1198 in the back. That's just something I haven't upgraded yet. Probably go to Helix 12 this year. But so far that's worked for us, and we've just kept, ride it.
Broke, not
ride it, man. So that's kind of where we've been at. So
you plan on getting a new Garmin?
I don't know yet. I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
What's your input on that?
Well, I actually have looked at it. It's awesome. I mean, I think all of us have seen it. If you're in the crappie fishing world and you've not seen a video on social media recently of Panoptics and what that looks like, you've just been asleep.
Absolutely.
I mean, we love watching it. If you guys are like me, you've got on YouTube and you've pulled up the videos and you've watched it. It's unbelievable. I'm a firm believer, again, we're pretty loyal about things, about if we've got a brand and it's working for us. And, it's one of the things that I love about working with Crappie Magnet. Not only is our philosophy and kind of ideology about how to treat people and life in general match up well with Jeff. Jeff is also a sponsor and a product developer that will listen to his people.
That's what it takes. That's what I like about a lot of companies when they listen.
Absolutely, and so we've found loyalty is a big piece. If you've got someone that produces a good piece of equipment, they listen to you, they've got good service, they try to help you. I try to be loyal to that, and so far, Humminbird has served us extremely well. The Panoptic stuff looks good, though, boys.
It does look
good.
It
looks good.
It looks so sweet.
I tell you what's neat about their boat. If you ever see them, you got to go and look at it. You see nothing.
Nothing.
Like a regular bass boat?
Well, I'm just saying there's nothing in it. Inside the boat, they got 2 poles sticking up.
Yeah.
I'm like,
simple.
Yeah, it's so cool to see the simplicity of single pole jig fishing. In
My boat is opposite.
Oh my gosh, I got 18 poles. I'm tripping over it. I can't get around. I broke one trying to get
rod
the
holders everywhere.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So speaking of your tackle again, tell us what your whole rig is, from your pole to your line.
Okay. We have been blessed this year. We've been B&M Poles has picked us up this year, and they're sponsoring us, and we've always used B&M. It's another company that we've been, they've been loyal. We've been loyal to them. We use a neat setup. I really like it. I use a 5.5 sharpshooter rod to vertical jig with.
You use a 5.5 vertical jig?
It's crazy,
vertical jig.
So what happens when you get in shallow water?
That's all I use.
No matter what?
5.5, no matter what.
Now what if you're getting shallow water or clear water?
Shallow water, I'll tell you, shallow clear water, you won't find me in. If it's,
a lot of people scared of it. A lot of people scared of clear water.
Yeah. I'm not so much if we've got depth and you're finding fish, in some depth, but when it's clear and shallow, you're not going to find me in it. I'm a firm believer, and I think a lot of guys are finding this out on the tournament trail over time. Extremely clear water is not fertile water. It's probably not where you need to be to fish a tournament when you're looking for big fish. Not to say there's never big fish in clear water, but if I'm looking for a big fish tournament, I'm wanting some stain. back to that piece, Dad fishes a 10-foot Buck's graphite jig pole. The reason we do that, he and I can stand shoulder to shoulder on the front deck of the boat, or he can be slightly beside me. And a lot of times he's fishing kind of here on my back hip. I'm up at the very front, and we're fishing the same place in the brush pile. If he's fishing a short rod in the back, he can't get to the brush I'm fishing. If he's fishing...
You take up that slack.
Yeah, if I'm fishing a long rod, then I'm out in front of him, and he can't get to it. So...
That's a lie. That's good.
Literally, we've got our rod tips oftentimes as we're fishing within a foot of each other. And most people couldn't stand that. It's like, give me some space, I'm claustrophobic, but, it works really well for us. And, over the years, I've learned that reading a graph is so important. And Jeff mentioned it earlier about, you watch Dude or Brian fish, or you watch me or Dad fish, and you're not going to see me looking at that rod. I mean, my brain's, I think your brain just routes to where, Dad said it's kind of like your brain is now in your hand. You don't even have to think, it's just set. So I will literally sit all day long and watch that graph and watch the fish on the graph and watch how that brush pile changes sometimes as you catch fish, or watch how the fish may move off of it a little bit. And that technique just really allows us to hone in on those brush piles and fish them well and fish them efficiently.
Do you do it old school? Like, do you have a remote, or do you do old school with the foot pedal?
I do old school foot
old
pedal.
school.
Yeah, and I really like that. I don't like having my hands tied up to touch remotes, and I want that right here, and I want it with my foot.
What about what line are you using?
We use Stren 8-pound test mono. I've always used mono. Some of these guys, you listen to like a Kevin Rogers out there, it's using braid. He talks about the feel of that. That's great. That works for his style. He does wonderful with it. But Dad and I, we've just found over the years the mono works well. I don't have a problem with
Same
mono.
thing, not broke. Don't fix it.
Just keep riding it. He's got my interest peaked. I listened to Kevin Rogers here a while back and talk about the braid and about feel, how great the feel is with braid. And I think with these soft hooks, the double cross jig head that Jeff mentioned here, this soft wire hook will actually straighten out extremely easy. And I would imagine with braid,
Pull it out of the stump.
Yeah, pull it out. So it could be a good thing. We have been blessed. There's a little thing that Dude made. It's a little lure knocker. And we keep talking about Dude. He's kind of like, this guy's kind of like an inventor.
He's like a MacGyver.
Me. Let me tell you the funniest thing. The Tennessean is a newspaper in Nashville and Knoxville, and there was an article written that said 77. Did you see that article? 7,750 reasons to listen to Dude Maddox.
Where is
That's
this
how
at?
many fish he caught and kept out of Percy Priest by himself in 12 months.
Yep.
Really?
That's how many.
What was the
who
number
does
again?
that? Over 7. That was like 7,700. It was an odd number. You got to realize, Dude counts everything he does.
Yep.
I mean, like, it's crazy.
OCD.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Documents.
You poured it on my
And
head
the
right
crazy
there.
thing about that is that he fishes by himself most of the time.
Yep.
How old is this guy?
60.
No, he's in his 70s. He's older than Dad. He's 72, I think,
but
74.
wiry. Oh, wiry. He just run right past you, get into the hole, knock you down.
Dude,
I didn't know.
You all would love this
You
guy.
gotta meet Dude. Dude is, and you call his phone. It says, "This is the Dude. Leave me a message."
I love it.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Oh yeah.
You talk about. I'm just kind of thinking here on the worst days while you was up in front of the boat. Name your worst experience up there during a tournament or any fishing trip while you was up front with bad conditions, but you was fishing that one po up front.
Yeah, I'm going to say one of the worst conditions we ever fished was this year in a fall tournament in November. We were on Barkley, and we got a dead south wind on Barkley, and we'd gone up around the Eddyville area, and we'd come, you come off the very northern part of Lake Barkley kind of lays east-west, but then once you get around Eddyville, it turns straight south. And
South wind's horrible right
south
there.
wind came howling through there, and we were setting out somewhere out around mouth Eddyville fishing, and waves coming up over the front of the boat, and you're standing there and we're single pole jigging it. And most people would say, you're idiots, how can you even tell? And we picked up 3-4 of our tournament fish there with waves coming straight up over the front of the boat. I mean, it had gotten where we'd thrown a buoy out, and the buoy just kept unwinding and kept going backwards, and we were up 2 boat lengths in front of the buoy just working it. But
That's awesome.
that's
awesome.
We don't sit down in a day's time. You know, we'll stand there if the tournament's 8 hours long. We're there 8 hours on that front deck battling it out. So.
What another little question that I've asked everybody so far is superstitions. You got to have a superstition if you're a really fisherman. Come on.
What do you think?
I can't tell you mine. I can't tell you mine. My wife might listen to this. I can't tell you. I don't take her. You know.
Oh man, I gotta hear it. I want to hear it. Let's hear some laughs.
How many comments we're gonna get on that one? If you don't.
I can't do it. I can't do it. Chris, what's yours?
I don't have superstitions. I know. I guess my superstition is to have no superstitions because I just think that gets in your head and messes with you. I don't. At the end of the day, I think it's just go out there and work hard and let the chips fall where they may. You know, prepare well. That's one thing that I think has really helped us. You know, in the tournament trail the last few years. I mean, we work it like a job. You know,
I tell you what, I will say that about these two. They work hard. They'll travel hours to put out brush on a lake. It's not their home lake.
Yeah.
That's what it takes to win tournaments. I mean, it's not just about how good you are. It's about how much time you put in. These guys do it. I mean, it's impressive the amount of time they put in.
You mentioned that real quick. I want to ask you about that. Nobody's actually gone through, and how do you want to make your brush pile?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a great question, man. Great question.
Yeah, it is, and you know, I'll say this up front. You know, each state has got its own law and rule about dropping brush. You know, some you have to have permits, some won't allow you to do it at all. You know, so check your local laws as far as that's concerned before you start doing it. I think it really depends on where you go. You know, a lot of places like a Kentucky lake, a Barkley lake, we're finding that fish seem to like a little more sparse cover. So if you can get small, isolated pieces of cover, like they call them mats there, so you know you're basically a pallet bed.
Oh yeah, wood pallet.
Yep, wood pallet.
Stake beds straight up.
Yep, stake beds straight up. Those are really efficient for when you travel distances. So like Jeff mentioned, if you're going to a foreign lake and I can just load up 2 or 3 pallets on my boat, ratchet strap them down. When I get there, toss them off the side. It takes about 10 minutes, and then I'm off to fish.
You do that at every tournament you go to?
No, not every tournament. We fished several this year that we did not have our own brush in. We fished Gunnersville early in the year, never sunk a piece of brush in
Little
Gunnersville.
insurance, I guess, when you put it out before anyway. I've got somewhere at least I know I could go.
Yeah, exactly.
So you doing that? How fast do you know that they pull to it?
I've seen we put a piece of brush out one time to fish a tournament on our home lake, Cave Run Lake, and we got that piece of brush out 10 days prior to that tournament, and it was a piece of brush that was laying up on the bank, and we actually drove past it in an area where we had a lot of success, and we saw that laying up on the bank, and I told Dad, I said, it's already got kind of moss on it, and I said, let's get that thing and pull it out here, and we did. We pulled it out, dumped it. 10 days later, we fished the tournament and caught 1.5 pound fish off of it. That was a big fish of the tournament.
Really?
So that was 10 days. But again, that was a piece of structure that, you know, was
Natural
aged.
and everything.
Yeah. I've seen the Fish and Wildlife Department at Kentucky Fish and Wildlife dump it in lakes, and us go over and have the waypoints, and within 3-4 days start catching small fish off of cedars that have been dumped. So again, I think it depends totally on the time of year that you dump that structure. If it's a time of year when fish are looking to spawn and you put out shallow structure, then they're going to pull to it. You know, they're looking for structure. There's other times of the year when fish are suspended that you would swear, you know, they're not going to my structure. It's no good. Well, they're not going to any structure.
Right.
You know, those fish are up in the column. They're spread out. So kind of depends.
What's your least favorite time of year to crappie fish?
There is none.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's funny. I sent my girlfriend a text literally this week, and I said something about I put some fish on it. And I said I love winter fishing, and then she said ha ha, and then I responded and fall fishing and summer fishing
Right.
and spring fishing. So yeah, we love all year, and I think that's important. You know, being on the water and just learning crappie behavior throughout the year. You know, we got too many folks are seasonal fishermen, and they wonder when a little transition why I'm not catching fish. Well, you don't know how to catch them that time of year because you're not giving it a
You're
shot.
not going out there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the misconception with crappie fishing out there is you only can catch them in the spring.
Yeah.
They only bite March and April, which is, as a guide, that's one of my least favorite times to crappie fish would be
No doubt.
the springtime. The
Less
fall.
predictable, isn't it?
Less predictable.
Yeah, I hate
Way
that.
More movement.
I hate that
Yep.
spring wind.
Way more weather controlled. Yep.
True. Is there any kind of I get back to your structure? I've read a lot of articles and read on the internet. Have you found a certain type of wood that you think fish draw to?
Willow or oak or
Yeah.
I've heard. I can't remember which one I read. That I heard they draw to more. You got your opinion on that?
Well,
Since you're a guy that I can already tell that you sink structure. I was just wondering if you went to that extent of trying to understand it more.
Yeah, we and one thing I do want to clarify with the sinking structure, I'll be honest with you, I don't know that we've had a ton of tournament success off of our own structure. You know, I've found other people's structure before and caught fish. We've found natural structure. Usually it's a combination. Brad mentioned, you know, it's nice to know you've got a couple of fallback places. And
Right.
that's normally what our brush sinking amounts to, other than on our home lake where we do, you know, quite a bit of work with it. We've sunk all manner of hardwood, softwood. We've done a lot of different stuff. Cedars are hard to beat. I'll be honest with you. They're really good. Willows seem to attract fish quicker than anything in the spring. If you can sink a willow, even with green buds on it, and sink it there and fish are looking to spawn, they love them. If you want something to last for years, put a hardwood in, put a hickory. You know, put a sycamore, sink one of those, and you've got something to last for years. Cedar trees, you know, something small, cedar like a Christmas tree, you're going to get a couple years out of that before most of the limbs are gone. I'm not saying it won't attract occasional fish, but it's not going to be a magnet like a bigger piece of hardwood structure. So,
yeah. Y'all got anything else y'all want to add to it?
Not that I can think of. Now I mentioned my wife. I know I can't let her hear this.
Man, I was wanting to try to pull that from you too.
we'll get it out and we'll post it.
Oh, I appreciate you.
don't do that. Think more of him than that, boys.
Yeah.
Don't let him.
Yeah.
He'll go hungry.
Brad, is anything else you want to add?
No, just appreciate you guys' time.
Yeah,
Appreciate what you guys are doing for crappie fishing.
Thank you,
I mean,
man.
more
Thank you.
information, more knowledge helps all of us out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for this podcast, you guys.
Yeah.
This is kind of cutting edge. There's a lot of podcasts out there for other sports, you know, deer hunting, bass fishing, those kind
Not
of things.
one for crappie though.
Not one for
We're
crappie.
first.
That's
There.
right.
That's
I like
awesome.
it. I like it.
Yeah, with special thanks to Grizzly Jig Company out here in Crowsville, Missouri at the 2019 here. Thanks to the Direction TV. Check out Mark Stowe there. CrappieCrazy.com. Anybody else we mentioned?
We're
Forget
good.
here. Hey, best special thanks to Kris, Mann, Jeff Smith here with Crappie Magnet. Thank
Appreciate you
y'all a
guys
lot.
having us.
Other than that, we're signing out. We'll see y'all.
All right, holler.
See you guys.
About a mile from the big muddy river, a place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift away.